The neighbor heard screaming, then 2 gunshots, and then silence. It was September 2020, early evening, and something terrible had just happened inside the house next door. Minutes later, Ashley Benefield appeared at another neighbor's door in Lakewood Ranch, Florida. She was holding a gun. Her voice was calm, controlled, almost detached. She said she'd shot her husband. She said it was self-defense. Inside her mother's house, Doug Benefield lay on the floor with 2 bullet wounds, one in the leg, one in the arm. That second bullet had traveled through his arm and into his chest cavity. He was still breathing, but barely conscious. He couldn't speak, couldn't tell his side of the story. Doug died at the hospital an hour later. He was 58 years old. They had been packing boxes for a move to Maryland. Their 4-year-old daughter, Emerson, was at a nearby park with Ashley's mother. The couple had been alone in the house for the first time in a while. After years of separation, restraining orders, and vicious court battles over custody, they were supposed to be starting over. A U-Haul sat in the driveway. Boxes were half-packed. In theory, this was a fresh start. But investigators found things that didn't fit Ashley's self-defense story. Both bullets hit Doug while he was turning away from her. She had a burner phone hidden in the house, a rental car reserved under a fake name, an escape plan already in motion. Ashley Benefield said she had no choice. The evidence suggested she had been planning this for weeks. Doug Benefield was a man who moved fast when he wanted something. He was born in 1961 in Palo Alto, California, and grew up in Huntsville, Alabama. He was a former naval flight officer, a Texas A&M graduate, a technology consultant who had built a comfortable life in Charleston, South Carolina. He'd been a fraternity member in college, the kind of guy who stayed connected to old friends and showed up at reunions. Friends described him as charming and generous, the type who would drop everything to help someone in need. He had a big personality to match his physical size. At 6 feet tall and around 300 pounds, Doug was impossible to miss in a room. He was devoted to his daughter Eva, who was 15 when Doug met Ashley. 9 months before that meeting, Doug's world had collapsed. His wife Renee had died suddenly from an undiagnosed heart condition. A 75% artery blockage that no one knew about until it was too late. And Eva had been the one to find her mother's body in their Charleston home. She was just a teenager, processing unimaginable trauma. Doug stepped into both parental roles. He promised his grieving daughter he would be there for her. He said he wouldn't remarry. He said he wouldn't have more children. Eva needed stability, and he would provide it. Then he met Ashley Byers at a political dinner in Palm Beach, and all those promises evaporated. Ashley was 24, 30 years younger than Doug. She was a former ballerina who had trained with the Maryland Youth Ballet, done some swimsuit modeling, and was now working on the Trump presidential campaign. She was beautiful, ambitious, and looking for someone who could help her build something bigger. Doug was smitten immediately. Here was this beautiful, ambitious young woman who seemed genuinely interested in him. After months of grief and loneliness following Renee's death, he felt alive again. He was funny, very smart, charming. Ashley later testified, "We just instantly clicked." 13 days after meeting, they got married. Doug didn't invite his daughter Eva to the wedding. He didn't invite most of his family. His cousin Tommy later said he would have talked Doug out of it if he'd known. But no one ever got the chance. The marriage was troubled from the start. Ashley moved into Doug's Charleston home, where his daughter, Ava, still lived. The living situation was immediately tense. Ava was grieving her mother and now had a stepmother, only 9 years older than her. Ashley tried to take on a motherly role, at Doug's encouragement. But Ava resisted. He basically told her that I needed somebody. Ava later said, "I needed a motherly role in my life, and I didn't think that I needed that." Doug threw himself into making Ashley happy. She wanted to start a ballet company, so he helped her found the American National Ballet. He handled the business side while she recruited dancers. In the summer of 2017, about 40 dancers arrived in Charleston. But Ashley wasn't there. She was pregnant, and the pregnancy was difficult. She went back to Florida to stay with her mother, leaving Doug to manage a company he knew nothing about. The ballet collapsed within months. The dancers dispersed, returning to their home states. So did the marriage. Ashley later testified that Doug had become increasingly volatile. She said he threw things, broke things, came at her like he was going to hit her. She said he told her she was lucky he punched walls instead of me. One incident stood out. During an argument about Eva, Ashley said Doug pulled out a gun, held it to his own head, and threatened to blow his brains out while she watched. Then he pulled the trigger and shot a hole in the ceiling. Doug's friend Trip Cormany remembered Doug telling him about it afterward. "I did the dumbest thing I've ever done in my life." 2 days later, they went ahead with a formal wedding reception anyway. In September 2017, Ashley left Doug. While he was out of town, she and her mother returned to the Charleston house. They packed up her belongings, clothes, personal items, whatever she could carry. Ashley left behind a handwritten letter that would later become evidence in her trial. The letter was scathing. She called Doug possessive, controlling, and manipulating. She wrote about the gun incident and other behavior she described as unsafe. She said his actions had left her fearful for my life and safety, as well as that of my unborn child. She moved back to Florida to stay with her mother, Alicia. She was pregnant, alone, and determined to never go back. The marriage was over. It had lasted less than a year, but the battle for their child was just beginning. Doug didn't accept the separation. He sent text after text, begging her to reconsider. He said he loved her. He wanted to be part of their baby's life. He wanted to try therapy, counseling, anything that might save the marriage. Ashley's response was to go on offense. She reported Doug to authorities for abuse. Child Protective Services got involved. Investigators showed up at Doug's door, asking questions about whether he was a danger to children. Eva, now 16, found herself being interviewed about her own father. "I was constantly having people come up to my door and questioning if my dad was a good dad," Eva later said. "And it just made me so angry because he was a great dad." After an investigation, Doug was cleared. No evidence of abuse was found. But Ashley escalated further. She accused Doug of poisoning her during the pregnancy. They were both tea drinkers, and she remembered him bringing her tea in bed. She became convinced he had been slowly poisoning her. She even suggested Doug had poisoned his first wife, Renee, the woman who had died of a heart condition 9 months before they met. Doug's cousin Tommy was stunned when Ashley shared this theory. "It's out of left field," Tommy said. I've read the autopsy report. It's clear. When Doug sent Ashley a package of tea for her birthday after they separated, she reported it to police as a potential poisoning attempt. Investigators tested the substance. Just tea. Nothing toxic. No charges were filed. But the accusation went on Doug's record anyway, part of Ashley's paper trail. Their daughter Emerson was born in March 2018. Doug wanted to be there for the birth. He had his lawyer send a letter requesting to be present. Ashley checked into the hospital the next day, without telling him. For 6 months, Ashley kept Doug from seeing his daughter entirely. He didn't meet Emerson until a judge intervened and forced Ashley to allow visitation. This became the pattern. Doug fighting for access to his child, Ashley fighting to keep him away. Restraining orders, custody motions, accusations and counter-accusations. The legal battle dragged on. Both sides hired lawyers. Both sides spent money they could have used to raise their daughter. By the summer of 2020, something unexpected happened. The couple began talking about reconciliation. Ashley suggested they move to Maryland together, her, Doug, and Emerson. A fresh start away from all the drama. Doug agreed. Despite everything, the accusations, the restraining orders, the years of being kept from his daughter, he still loved Ashley. He still wanted to make it work. He still believed they could find their way back to each other. On September 27th, 2020, they were packing a U-Haul truck for the move to Maryland. The plan was finally happening. After years of fighting, they were supposed to be starting fresh. The shooting happened around 7 p.m. in the living room of Ashley's mother's house. They had been packing moving boxes, clothes, household items, the accumulated possessions of a fractured family, trying to piece itself back together. Ashley's mother had taken Emerson to a nearby park, giving the couple time alone. According to Ashley, the argument started without warning. Doug struck her in the head. He tried to keep her in a room, blocking her exit. She feared for her life. Ashley had been carrying a .45 caliber handgun. This wasn't unusual for her. She'd worn a gun in her bra the very first night she met Doug, back at that political dinner. She believed in being armed. When Doug came at her, she said, she pulled the weapon. "I just held the gun like in front of me, and I said, 'Stop,'" Ashley testified. He got into this almost like a fighting stance. He started moving his arms and his hands around. He started coming towards me, and he lunged at me, and I just pulled the trigger. 2 shots. One hit his leg, one hit his arm, and traveled into his chest cavity. Ashley didn't call 911 herself. She walked out of the house, gun still in hand, and went to a neighbor's door. She calmly explained that she had just shot her husband in self-defense, but investigators found problems with her account almost immediately. Forensic analysis showed the bullets hit Doug while he was turning away from Ashley, not lunging toward her. One struck his leg, one struck his arm, and traveled into his chest. The trajectory didn't match a man charging forward. It matched a man who was rotating, perhaps turning to leave, perhaps trying to get away. If Doug was attacking her, why was his back partially to her when she pulled the trigger? There was also the escape plan. Ashley's own lawyer, Faith Brown, told police something that undermined the reconciliation narrative. Ashley had been planning to leave Doug secretly. She wasn't moving to Maryland with him. She was planning to escape. She had a burner phone that Doug didn't know about. She had a rental car reserved under a different name. She had a safe place to stay already lined up. This wasn't a woman reconciling with her husband. This was a woman preparing to disappear. According to Brown, Ashley believed Doug had gotten wind of the escape plan. That's what triggered the confrontation. Prosecutors would argue this wasn't self-defense at all. Ashley wanted sole custody of Emerson, and she knew a divorce would be expensive and uncertain. Doug had resources. Doug had lawyers. Doug might win. She'd spent years trying to keep him away from their daughter through accusations and court orders. None of it had worked permanently. The courts kept granting him access. The only way to guarantee sole custody was to eliminate the other parent entirely. Ashley Benefield was arrested on November 4th, 2020, and charged with second-degree murder. The case drew immediate media attention, with reporters calling it the Black Swan murder after Ashley's background as a professional ballet dancer. In July 2023, her lawyers argued for stand-your-ground protection. The judge disagreed. The evidence was strong enough for a jury to decide. The trial began in July 2024. Prosecutor Suzanne O'Donnell framed it clearly. This was a custody battle that this mother was going to win at all costs. And the cost was the life of Doug Benefield. Defense attorney Neil Taylor countered that Doug was abusive and Ashley acted in self-defense. He argued she suffered from battered woman syndrome. Ashley took the stand. She cried as she described the alleged abuse. On July 30th, 2024, the jury reached a verdict. Guilty of manslaughter with a firearm. Not murder. The jury didn't believe the prosecution had proven premeditation beyond a reasonable doubt, but not self-defense either. On December 3rd, 2024, Ashley Benefield was sentenced to 20 years in prison, followed by 10 years of probation. She showed little emotion as the judge read the sentence. Doug's daughter Eva was in the courtroom. She had watched Ashley's supporters bring 6-year-old Emerson to the courthouse throughout the trial. The Eva used her TikTok platform, she has 500,000 followers, to push back against the narrative that her father was an abuser. Ashley's lawyers have filed an appeal, arguing that the evidence didn't support the conviction. In February 2025, a judge denied her request for bond while the appeal proceeds. She remains incarcerated, maintaining her innocence. Her daughter Emerson is being raised by Ashley's mother. Doug's family has limited contact with the girl. The same pattern that existed when Doug was alive, now made permanent by his absence. The custody battle that consumed the last years of Doug Benefield's life ended with his death. Ashley got what she wanted in the most technical sense. She is the only living parent. But she'll spend the next 2 decades in prison. Emerson will grow up visiting her mother behind glass. By the time Ashley is released, her daughter will be in her mid-20s, older than Ashley was when she first met Doug at that political dinner all those years ago. Doug Benefield died at 58, shot twice by the woman he married 13 days after meeting her. He never got to raise his daughter. The reconciliation he hoped for ended with him bleeding out on a living room floor, while his killer walked calmly to a neighbor's house. Ashley maintains she acted in self-defense. She says Doug attacked her and she had no choice. The jury disagreed. The evidence disagreed. The bullets told a very different story.